The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the Riverdale Police Department as Detective Amara Johnson sipped her third cup of coffee. The precinct hummed with its usual morning chaos, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and the constant chatter of officers changing shifts. Amara had been with the department for 15 years, and at 38, she had earned every bit of respect she commanded among her peers. "Morning." "Detective," called Officer Rivera from the front desk. "Those case files you asked for came in. I put them on your desk." Amara nodded her thanks and walked to her small but meticulously organized desk in the corner of the bullpen. As one of the few black women in the department, she had learned early on that she needed to be twice as good to get half the recognition. Her desk was a testament to her dedication. Framed commendations lined the wall behind her chair, each one a battle won in her 15-year career. She opened the first file and began reviewing the numbers. Something didn't add up. For the third time this month, the evidence log didn't match the inventory sheets. Money and drugs listed as recovered in the arrest reports weren't matching what made it to the evidence room. "Hey, Chen," she called to her partner across the desk cluster. "Can you pull up the Henderson drug bust from last month? I want to cross-reference something." Detective Chen nodded and began typing. He had been partnered with Amara for 6 years, and their solve rate was the highest in the department. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "Probably nothing," Amara replied, not wanting to voice her suspicions without solid proof. "Just a hunch." Across the room, Lieutenant James Wilson watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. At 52, Wilson was a 25-year veteran of the force with a receding hairline and a perpetual scowl. He nudged Sergeant Thomas Reed, who was scrolling through his phone. "Johnson's digging through the Henderson case," Wilson muttered. Reed looked up, his expression suddenly alert. "That's the third case file she's pulled this week," Reed said, setting his phone down. At 45, Reed was Wilson's right-hand man and enforcer. What he lacked in brains he made up for in intimidation. Should we be worried? Wilson watched as Amara spread the files across her desk, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Let me handle it," he said, standing up and straightening his uniform. He strolled across the room, stopping at Amara's desk. "Working hard or hardly working, Johnson?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes cold. Amara looked up, her face neutral. Years of dealing with Wilson had taught her to hide her true feelings. "Just reviewing some old cases, Lieutenant. Something seems off with the evidence logs." Wilson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't waste your time. Those cases are closed. We've got new ones piling up. The chief wants results, not reopened cases." "I understand, sir," Amara replied, not backing down. "But if there's a procedural issue with how we're logging evidence, it could compromise future cases." Wilson leaned closer, dropping his voice. "Look, Johnson, you're a good detective. One of our best. But sometimes it's better to focus on moving forward, not looking backward. Trust me on this." The threat was subtle but clear. Amara met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "I'll keep that in mind, Lieutenant." Wilson straightened up, his message delivered. "See that you do." He turned and walked back to his desk where Reed was waiting expectantly. "Well?" Reed asked. "She's not backing down," Wilson muttered, sitting heavily in his chair. "She's going to be a problem." Reed glanced over at Amara, who had already returned to her files. "What do you want to do about it?" Wilson thought for a moment, tapping his fingers on the desk. "We need to discredit her. Make sure nobody believes anything she might find." Reed grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "I might have an idea." Later that afternoon, Wilson and Reed sat in Wilson's car outside the county courthouse. They were waiting for Judge Harold Klein to finish his last case of the day. "Are you sure this is necessary?" Reed asked, fidgeting with his watch. "Maybe we could just transfer her to another precinct." Wilson shook his head. "Too risky. Johnson's smart. If she connects the dots and takes it to Internal Affairs or the FBI, we're done. We need to destroy her credibility completely." The courthouse doors opened and Judge Klein emerged. At 60, he was a tall, thin man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him an air of scholarly authority. The public respected him. Only a select few knew that his judicial robes hid a man deeply in debt from years of gambling. "There he is," Wilson said, starting the car. They pulled up alongside the judge as he walked to his car. "Need a ride, Your Honor?" Wilson called out. Judge Klein looked around cautiously before getting in the back seat. "This better be important," Klein said, his voice tense. "We shouldn't be seen together." Wilson drove to a quiet diner on the edge of town, The three men sat in a booth in the far corner, away from windows and other customers. "We have a problem," Wilson said after they ordered coffee. "Detective Johnson is looking into some of our cases." Klein's face paled. "How much does she know?" "Not enough to prove anything yet," Reed interjected. "But she's persistent." For the past 3 years, the three men had been running a profitable side business. Wilson and Reed would arrest drug dealers, skim cash and drugs before logging the evidence, and then Klein would ensure the cases were either dismissed on technicalities or result in minimal sentences. The dealers paid for this service and the money was good enough to pay off Klein's gambling debts and set up comfortable retirement funds for the two officers. "So, what do you need from me?" Klein asked, though he already knew the answer. Wilson leaned forward. "We need to set her up. Make it look like she's the one who's been compromised. And you need a warrant," Klein said, understanding immediately, "based on evidence that we'll provide," Reed added with a smirk. The judge sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "This is a big step. Framing another officer." "We've covered for you for 3 years," Wilson reminded him. "Paid off your bookies when they came looking. This isn't the time to develop a conscience." Klein put his glasses back on, his decision made. "What's your plan?" Back at the station the next morning, Amara continued her investigation. She had created a spreadsheet tracking discrepancies across 12 different drug busts over the past year. All of them had been overseen by either Wilson or Reed, and all had gone through Judge Klein's courtroom. In each case, the documented street value of the seized drugs was significantly higher than what was logged into evidence. The pattern was becoming clear. "Find anything interesting?" Chen asked, rolling his chair over to her desk. Amara hesitated. Chen was her partner and friend, but she wasn't ready to share her suspicions yet. Not until she had irrefutable proof. "Just trying to clean up some paperwork," she said. "You've been at it for days," Chen observed. "That's a lot of paperwork," Amara smiled. "You know me. I like things by the book." Chen nodded, but his eyes showed concern. "Just be careful, okay? You've been getting some looks from the brass." "I appreciate the warning," Amara said. "But if something's wrong, we have a duty to fix it." Across the room, Wilson watched the exchange. He turned to Reed. "Time to move. She's not letting this go." Reed nodded and left the room, phone in hand. 20 minutes later, he returned with a small flash drive. "It's done," he said quietly. "My buddy in tech set everything up. Text messages, bank records, photos, all linking Johnson to Darnell Taylor. Darnell Taylor was a mid-level drug dealer they had arrested 3 months ago. Instead of the usual arrangement, they had pushed for maximum charges when Taylor refused to pay for their services. He was currently awaiting trial. "And Taylor will cooperate?" Wilson asked. Reed smiled coldly. "For a reduced sentence? He'll say whatever we want." The next day, Wilson met Judge Klein in his chambers, handing him the flash drive. "Everything you need is here. Bank deposits that match payment dates from Taylor. Text messages arranging meetings. Photos of them together that look compromising." Klein reviewed the material on his computer, frowning. "This won't hold up under serious scrutiny," he said. "The tech work is amateur at best." "It doesn't need to hold up forever," Wilson explained. "Just long enough to suspend her and destroy her reputation. Once she's labeled as corrupt, nobody will believe her accusations." Klein nodded slowly. "I'll issue the warrant tomorrow. Internal Affairs will handle the arrest." "Already arranged," Wilson confirmed. "Captain Lewis owes me a favor. He'll make sure it's handled quietly." As they finalized their plan, neither man noticed the courthouse janitor pausing outside the door, his ear turned toward their voices. The janitor, an older man named Ray Washington, had known Amara since she was a rookie. He had watched her rise through the ranks, always treating everyone with respect, including the cleaning staff that most officers ignored. Ray moved away from the door, troubled by what he had heard. He didn't understand all the details, but he knew enough. Detective Johnson was in danger, and he needed to warn her. Meanwhile, Amara had just received an email that made her heart race. The position of police chief was opening up as Chief Daniels announced his retirement. The email encouraged qualified officers to apply. Amara stared at her screen, a mix of excitement and determination washing over her. This could be her chance to make real changes in the department, to address the systemic issues she had been documenting. She began working on her application, unaware that across town, 3 men were plotting to destroy everything she had worked for. The wheels were in motion, and the coming days would test Amara in ways she had never imagined. The following morning started like any other for Amara. She arrived at the station at 7:30 a.m., travel mug of coffee in hand, ready to tackle the mountain of paperwork on her desk. She had stayed up late the night before, polishing her application for the chief position until every word felt right. The thought of becoming the department's first black female chief both thrilled and terrified her. "Morning, Detective Johnson," called the desk sergeant. "You're in early again," Amara smiled. "Got a lot to catch up on, Morris." She settled at her desk and opened her laptop, eager to continue her investigation before the day's distractions began. As she scrolled through the spreadsheet she'd created, the pattern looked more obvious than ever. 12 cases, all handled by Wilson and Reed, all with the same judge, all with missing evidence. It was no coincidence. Chen arrived 20 minutes later, setting a fresh coffee on her desk. "Thought you might need a refill. You look like you didn't sleep much?" "Thanks," Amara said gratefully. "I was working on something important." "The chief position?" Chen asked with a knowing smile. Amara looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Everyone knows you should apply," Chen replied. "You're the best detective we have. The department needs someone like you in charge." His words warmed her, but before she could respond, the station's atmosphere suddenly shifted. The front doors swung open and Captain Lewis from Internal Affairs walked in, flanked by 2 officers Amara didn't recognize. The bullpen fell silent as all eyes followed their purposeful stride toward Amara's desk. "Detective Amara Johnson?" Captain Lewis said, his face unreadable. Amara stood, a sense of dread washing over her. "Yes, sir. I need you to come with us," he said, his voice formal and cold. Chen stepped forward. "What's this about, Captain?" Lewis ignored him, focusing on Amara. "We can do this quietly or we can make a scene. Your choice, Detective." Amara felt all eyes in the room on her. Her mind raced, but her training kicked in. "Stay calm, don't escalate." "I'll come quietly," she said, maintaining her composure. "But I'd like to know what this is about." "You'll be briefed at IA headquarters," Lewis replied, gesturing toward the door. As Amara gathered her jacket, she noticed Wilson and Reed watching from the corner of the room. Wilson's face was carefully neutral, but Reed couldn't hide his smirk. In that moment, Amara knew. This was their doing. Chen caught her arm as she passed. "Call me when you can," he whispered. "I'll find out what's going on." The ride to Internal Affairs was silent and tense. Amara sat in the back of the unmarked car, her mind working overtime. They couldn't know about her investigation yet. She hadn't shared it with anyone. So what was this about? At IA headquarters, Amara was led to an interrogation room and told to wait. 20 minutes passed before Captain Lewis returned, this time with a thick folder and a stern expression. "Do you know a man named Darnell Taylor?" he asked without preamble. Amara frowned. "The drug dealer from the West Side case? I wasn't the arresting officer, but yes, I know the case." Lewis slid a photo across the table. It showed Amara talking to a man on a street corner. The man's face was clear, Darnell Taylor, but Amara couldn't place the memory. "That's not possible," she said, studying the image. "I've never met Taylor in person." "Really?" Lewis pulled out more photos. Amara and Taylor at a coffee shop. Amara handing something to Taylor in a car. These were taken over the past 6 months. Amara's heart raced. "These are fake. I've never met this man outside of seeing him in the station after his arrest." Lewis ignored her protest and pushed a document toward her. "This is a warrant to search your home, car, and personal belongings." "We've already begun the search." "On what grounds?" Amara demanded, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "We have evidence that you've been taking bribes from Taylor to compromise cases," Lewis stated flatly. "Text messages, financial records, these photos. It's all very damning, Detective." Amara felt like the floor was dropping beneath her. "This is insane. I've never taken a bribe in my life. This is a setup." "That's what they all say," Lewis replied, unmoved. "We've also spoken to Mr. Taylor. He's been quite cooperative in exchange for consideration in his case." "He's lying," Amara insisted. "Check my bank records." "Check my phone." "You won't find anything because there's nothing to find." Lewis slid another document across the table. "Your bank statements. 5 deposits of $5,000 each over the past 6 months. All cash deposits made at different branches around the city." Amara stared at the paper, her mind reeling. "This isn't my account. I mean, it has my name, but these aren't my transactions. I never made these deposits." The account was opened with your driver's license and social security number, Lewis countered. Your fingerprints are on the signature card. Amara's training as a detective kicked in, helping her think past her panic. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to frame her. This wasn't a hasty setup, it was calculated and thorough. I want a lawyer, she said firmly. Lewis nodded as if he'd expected this. Of course. In the meantime, I'm placing you on administrative leave pending the outcome of this investigation. Badge and gun, please. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. 15 years of dedicated service, and it had come to this. With trembling fingers that she fought to control, she unclipped her badge and removed her service weapon, placing them on the table. This isn't right, she said quietly. Someone is setting me up. Lewis gathered her items. If that's true, the investigation will bear it out. Until then, you're suspended without pay. Outside the IA building, Amara stood on the sidewalk, feeling strangely untethered without the familiar weight of her badge and gun. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chen. What happened? Are you okay? She was about to reply when she noticed a car parked across the street. Wilson sat behind the wheel, watching her with undisguised satisfaction. Their eyes met, and he had the audacity to smile and tip an imaginary hat before driving away. Rage and determination coursed through her. This was their doing, and she would prove it. Back at her apartment, Amara found her door ajar, the space inside completely ransacked. IA had been thorough in their search. Drawers emptied onto the floor, furniture moved, even her mattress flipped. They had taken her laptop and all her files. She sank onto her couch, trying to process everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. It was from the chief's office, a formal acknowledgement of her application for the chief. Position followed by a terse addendum noting that her application was now on hold pending the outcome of the IA investigation. Her eyes burned with tears of frustration, but she refused to let them fall. Crying wouldn't solve anything. She needed to think. She needed to fight back. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Cautiously, she approached, peering through the peephole. It was Ray, the courthouse janitor she had known for years. Miss Amara, Ray said when she opened the door. I heard what happened. Can I come in? She ushered him inside, clearing a space on the couch. How did you know where I live? Your partner gave me your address, Ray explained. Detective Chen is worried about you. They're saying I took bribes, Ray, Amara said, still in disbelief. They've suspended me. Ray nodded gravely. I know, and I know who's behind it too. I overheard Judge Klein talking with those officers, Wilson and Reed. They're setting you up because you're onto them. Amara's head snapped up. What exactly did you hear? Enough to know they're dirty, Ray said. They were talking about planting evidence against you. Something about text messages and photos with some drug dealer. Darnell Taylor, Amara supplied, her mind racing. Ray, this is exactly what I needed. You need to come forward, tell Internal Affairs what you heard. Ray's face fell. I can't do that, Miss Amara. I got my grandkids living with me. I lose this job, I got nothing. Amara understood his fear, but disappointment crashed over her nonetheless. Without Ray's testimony, it would be her word against theirs. I can't ask you to risk your family, she conceded, but this helps me know I'm on the right track. After Ray left, Amara began pacing her apartment, mind working furiously. They had taken her laptop with all her evidence, but they didn't know about the backup drive hidden in her kitchen disguised as a can of coffee. Years of dealing with evidence tampering had taught her to always keep copies. She retrieved the drive and plugged it into her personal tablet. Everything was there. Her spreadsheets tracking the discrepancies in evidence logs, her notes on the connections between Wilson, Reed, and Judge Klein. It wasn't enough to clear her name yet, but it was a start. Her phone rang. Chen calling for the third time. I'm okay, she said when she answered, but I need your help. Anything, Chen replied without hesitation. This is wrong, and everyone with a brain knows it. You're the most honest cop in the department. I need you to be my eyes and ears at the station, Amara explained. And I need access to the evidence in the Taylor case. I think that's where we'll find proof of tampering. That's going to be tough, Chen warned. They've restricted access to all your cases. Then we'll need to be creative, Amara said, a plan already forming in her mind. Meet me tomorrow morning and bring everything you can find on Wilson and Reed's recent arrests. As night fell, Amara sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by notes. They had tried to destroy her career and reputation, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated her. She wasn't just fighting for her job anymore. She was fighting for justice and for the future of the department she loved. And as the clock struck midnight, a new email arrived in her inbox. It was from the mayor's office requesting an interview for the chief position. Despite everything, they were still considering her application. The message ended with a single line that gave her hope. The selection committee is aware of the current allegations and will be monitoring the situation closely. We value integrity above all else in our selection process. Amara smiled for the first time that day. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Dawn broke over Riverdale as Amara sat in her car outside a small diner on the edge of town. She had barely slept, her mind churning with plans and possibilities. The weight of the injustice pressed on her chest, but beneath it burned a fierce determination. She would not go down without a fight. She spotted Chen's car pulling into the parking lot and straightened in her seat. Her partner had been her rock through countless cases, and she needed him now more than ever. Chen slid into the passenger seat, a thick manila folder in hand. His usually neat appearance was rumpled, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept much either. "You okay?" he asked, studying her face. Amara gave a tight smile. "I've been better. Did anyone see you take those files?" Chen shook his head. "I've been gathering bits and pieces for days ever since I noticed you were onto something. Nothing that would be missed right away." "Smart," Amara said, feeling a rush of gratitude. "What did you find?" Chen opened the folder. "I pulled everything I could on Wilson and Reed's cases for the past year. Arrest reports, evidence logs, court transcripts, and I found something interesting." He pulled out a sheet of paper. Every case that went through Judge Klein's court had the same pattern. Evidence amounts recorded at the scene were always higher than what made it to the evidence room. "I noticed that too," Amara said. "But that's not enough to prove conspiracy." "No," Chen agreed. "But this might help." He handed her a list of names. "These are all the dealers who got reduced sentences or had their cases dismissed by Klein. I cross-referenced them with visitors' logs at the county jail. 3 days before each court date, Wilson or Reed visited each one." Amara's eyes widened. "They were arranging the bribes." "That's my guess," Chen said. "But we need proof, and we need to figure out how they framed you." Amara thought for a moment. "The Taylor case is our best shot. He's the one they're claiming I took bribes from. If we can prove he's lying." Chen nodded. "I already pulled his visitor log. Wilson met with him 4 times in the past month. The last meeting was 2 days before your arrest. They coached him," Amara said, the pieces falling into place. "Promised him a deal if he testified against me." "Probably," Chen agreed. "But how do we prove it?" Amara tapped the steering wheel, thinking. "We need someone on the inside at the jail. Someone who might have overheard their conversations." Chen smiled slowly. "I might know someone. Officer Patel works in the jail's security office. She oversees the camera systems. Do you think she'd help us?" Amara asked, hope rising. "She's always respected you," Chen said, "and she can't stand Wilson. It's worth a try." 2 hours later, they sat in Officer Patel's small apartment, watching grainy security footage on her laptop. Patel was a petite woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "I shouldn't be doing this," she muttered, as she fast-forwarded through hours of footage. "If anyone finds out, we'll make sure that doesn't happen," Amara promised. "We just need to see if there's anything unusual in Wilson's meetings with Taylor." "There," Chen pointed at the screen. "That's Wilson entering the meeting room." Patel zoomed in. The footage showed Wilson sitting across from Taylor, sliding a document across the table. Taylor read it, nodded, and signed it. "No audio accompanied the video. Can you read what that document says?" Amara asked, leaning closer. Patel shook her head. "The angle's wrong, but I can try to enhance it." After several attempts, they could make out only a few words. "Testimony, reduced sentence, and Johnson." "It's something," Amara said, "but not enough. We need more." Patel hesitated, then said, "There might be another way. All visitors to high-security prisoners have to go through a metal detector and leave their phones in lockers. But I've seen Wilson bypass this by flashing his badge." "So he could have recorded their conversations?" Chen asked. "It's possible," Patel said. "The question is, where would he store those recordings?" Amara thought about it. "His personal laptop, probably. He wouldn't risk putting them on department servers. Which means we need access to his laptop, Chen said, frowning. That's not going to be easy. Maybe we don't need the recordings themselves, Amara said slowly. Maybe we just need proof they exist. Later that afternoon, Amara sat in the office of Assistant District Attorney Diane Harper. The ADA was known for her tough stance on corruption and her by-the-book approach to prosecution. If anyone would listen without bias, it would be her. I appreciate you meeting with me, Amara said as she laid out her evidence. I know how this looks. Harper studied the documents, her expression neutral. You're asking me to believe that 2 decorated officers and a respected judge are involved in a bribery scheme, and they framed you when you got too close. I know it sounds far-fetched, Amara admitted. But the evidence is there if you look for it. Harper leaned back in her chair. Detective Johnson, I've worked with you for years. You've always been thorough and honest. But what you're bringing me isn't enough for a warrant. Amara's heart sank. What would be enough? Direct evidence of tampering, Harper said. Witness testimony, something that directly links them to framing you. The jail footage, Amara started, shows an officer meeting with a prisoner. Harper interrupted. There's nothing illegal about that. Amara took a deep breath. What if I told you there might be recordings of Wilson coaching Taylor on what to say about me? Harper's eyebrow raised. That would certainly be interesting. Do you have these recordings? Not yet, Amara admitted. But I have reason to believe they exist on Wilson's personal laptop. Harper shook her head. I can't get you a warrant based on a hunch. It's more than a hunch, Amara insisted. Officer Patel saw Wilson bring his phone into meetings with Taylor, which is against jail protocol. Still circumstantial, Harper said. Then she paused, seeming to consider something. However, there might be another angle we could pursue. I'm listening, Amara said eagerly. If Wilson recorded his conversations with Taylor without Taylor's knowledge, that's illegal wiretapping, Harper explained. If we could get Taylor to confirm he didn't know he was being recorded. You want me to talk to Taylor? Amara asked, surprised. He's the one who's lying about me taking bribes. He's also the weak link, Harper pointed out. If Wilson and Reed promised him a deal that hasn't materialized, he might be feeling nervous, especially if he learns he was recorded without consent. Amara nodded slowly, understanding the strategy. And if Taylor confirms the recordings exist, that gives you cause for a warrant. Exactly, Harper said. But you'll need to be careful. You can't approach Taylor directly while you're under investigation. I might know someone who can help with that, Amara said, thinking of Ray. The next day, Ray Washington wheeled his janitor cart into the visitation area of the county jail. No one gave him a second glance as he mopped the floors and emptied trash cans. When the guards changed shifts, he slipped a note to Taylor through the food slot in the visitation booth. The note was simple. Wilson recorded your meetings. If he goes down, you'll be the fall guy. Meet with Detective Chen tomorrow to learn more. That evening, Amara and Chen waited anxiously for news. Finally, Chen's phone rang. Taylor's requesting to meet with me, he said after hanging up. He's claiming to have information about an ongoing investigation. Amara felt a surge of hope. Our plan is working. What did Harper say? She'll have a stenographer present to record his statement, Chen replied. If he confirms the recordings exist and that Wilson coached him to lie about you, she'll request warrants for Wilson's devices and residence. And if we find those recordings, Amara began, we'll have proof of the frame-up, Chen finished. The next morning, Amara paced her apartment waiting for news from Chen. The hours dragged by, each minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, at nearly 2 p.m, her phone rang. Taylor talked, Chen said without preamble. He admitted, Wilson promised him a reduced sentence in exchange for false testimony against you. He also confirmed Wilson recorded their conversations and showed him the recordings to help him practice his story. Amara felt a wave of relief. Did Harper get the warrants? Better, Chen replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. She got Judge Rodriguez to sign them, not Klein. They're executing them right now. What about my case? Amara asked. Captain Lewis is reopening the investigation, Chen said. The charges haven't been dropped yet, but Harper thinks they will be once we find those recordings. Amara felt tears spring to her eyes. Thank you, Chen. I couldn't have done this without you. Don't thank me yet, he cautioned. We still need to find those recordings. Later that evening, Chen arrived at Amara's apartment with a bottle of wine and news. They found the recordings, he announced as she let him in. They were encrypted on Wilson's laptop, but tech got through it. 5 separate meetings with Taylor, all recorded without his knowledge or consent. And? Amara prompted, barely daring to hope. Chen's face broke into a wide grin. Wilson spelled it out in black and white. He told Taylor exactly what to say about you, promised him a deal, the whole 9 yards. Harper says it's the clearest case of framing she's ever seen. Amara sank onto her couch, overwhelmed with relief. What about Reed and Judge Klein? Reed's already talking, trying to cut a deal, Chen said, pouring them each a glass of wine. Klein has lawyered up, but with both Wilson and Reed flipping, it doesn't look good for him. Amara took the glass he offered. And my suspension? Officially lifted as of 4 o'clock today, Chen said, raising his glass in a toast. You're back on the force, Detective Johnson. She clinked her glass against his, a weight lifting from her shoulders. I still can't believe we did it. Believe it, Chen said firmly. And there's more news. The mayor's office called. They want to meet with you tomorrow about the chief position. Amara's eyes widened. Even after all this? Because of all this, Chen corrected. You stood up to corruption and won. That's exactly the kind of leader they're looking for. As they sat together celebrating their victory, Amara's phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the mayor's office, confirming her interview time for the following day. The email ended with a personal note from the mayor herself. Detective Johnson, your integrity and perseverance through this ordeal have only strengthened our belief that you are exactly what the Riverdale Police Department needs in its next chief. We look forward to discussing your vision for the future. Amara smiled, a feeling of vindication washing over her. The fight wasn't over. There would be trials and testimony ahead, but the truth had prevailed. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would soon be in a position to ensure that justice would always be served in Riverdale. The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived with a sense of anticipation that hung in the air like summer heat. Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her best suit, a charcoal gray ensemble she reserved for court appearances and special occasions. Today qualified as both. 3 weeks had passed since the evidence against Wilson and Reed had been uncovered. Those weeks had been a whirlwind of depositions, meetings with prosecutors, and preparation for today. Through it all, Amara had maintained her composure, but the strain showed in the subtle shadows beneath her eyes. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was Chen. You ready for this? He asked when she answered. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied, checking her watch. Are you outside? Just pulled up, Chen confirmed. The media's already gathering at the courthouse. Amara sighed. The case had exploded into a local sensation. Corruption in the police force always made headlines, but the dramatic elements of this story, respected officers framing a decorated detective who happened to be a black woman, had captured the public's attention in a way few cases did. Let's get this over with, she said, grabbing her purse and heading for the door. Outside her apartment building, Chen waited in his sedan. He offered an encouraging smile as she slid into the passenger seat. Heard anything new? She asked as they pulled away from the curb. Chen nodded. Word is Reed's lawyer is pushing hard for a plea deal. He's willing to testify against Wilson and Klein in exchange for reduced charges. And Wilson? Still maintaining his innocence, Chen said with a snort. But the recordings speak for themselves. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the day ahead settling between them. Finally, Amara spoke. Did you hear anything about the chief position? Chen glanced at her. Only that they've delayed the final decision until after today's hearing. Makes sense. They want to see how this plays out. Or if it plays out at all, Amara said quietly. Despite the evidence, she couldn't shake the worry that somehow Wilson, Reed, and Klein would escape justice. She'd seen too many guilty people walk free over the years. The courthouse came into view, its stone steps crowded with reporters and cameras. Amara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the gauntlet ahead. I'll be right beside you, Chen promised as they parked. Just keep your head up and don't give them anything. They made their way through the press, ignoring the shouted questions and camera flashes. Inside, the courthouse bustled with activity. Lawyers hurried down hallways, clutching briefcases and files. Court officers directed traffic, their faces stern and professional. Assistant District Attorney Harper waited for them outside courtroom 3, her expression serious but confident. "Detective Johnson, good morning." She greeted Amara with a firm handshake. "Ready for today?" "As ready as I can be," Amara replied. "Any last-minute developments I should know about?" Harper glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "Judge Klein has recused himself, obviously. Judge Patterson will be presiding." "Patterson?" Chen interjected. "He's tough but fair." "That's good news." Harper nodded. "There's more. Wilson's lawyer reached out this morning. He's feeling the pressure and might be willing to cooperate if we offer a deal." Amara frowned. "After everything he did, he wants a deal?" "It would strengthen our case against Klein," Harper pointed out. "And frankly, Klein is the bigger fish. A corrupt judge can do more damage than corrupt officers." Before Amara could respond, the courtroom doors opened, and people began filing in. The three of them moved with the crowd, finding seats near the front. The courtroom filled quickly. Media representatives claimed the back rows while various police officers and courthouse staff occupied much of the remaining space. Amara spotted Ray, the courthouse janitor, slipping quietly into a corner seat. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. At precisely 9 a.m., the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Patterson entered. He was a tall man with silver hair and glasses, known for running an efficient courtroom and having zero tolerance for nonsense. "Be seated," he instructed, settling behind the bench. "We're here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of State versus Wilson, Reed, and Klein. Are all parties present?" The lawyers confirmed they were ready to proceed. Amara watched as Wilson and Reed were led in from a side door. Both wore suits instead of uniforms, looking diminished without their badges. Judge Klein entered separately, his usual judicial robes replaced by an expensive but conservative suit. None of the men made eye contact with Amara. Harper stood to present the state's case. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Lieutenant James Wilson and Sergeant Thomas Reed systematically abused their positions as law enforcement officers. They skimmed evidence, primarily drugs and cash, from arrests. They then enlisted Judge Harold Klein to ensure these cases resulted in minimal sentences or dismissals, in exchange for payments to cover the judge's gambling debts." She continued, outlining the conspiracy with precision. When Detective Amara Johnson began noticing discrepancies in evidence logs, these three defendants conspired to frame her, manufacturing false evidence and coercing a witness to provide false testimony against her. As Harper spoke, Amara observed the three defendants. Wilson sat stone-faced, his posture rigid. Reed looked nervous, his eyes darting around the courtroom. Klein stared at the table in front of him, his expression unreadable. "The state is prepared to present substantial evidence," Harper concluded, "including recorded conversations where Lieutenant Wilson explicitly coaches a witness to provide false testimony against Detective Johnson." Judge Patterson nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Harper." "Defense?" Wilson's lawyer rose first, a slick man in an expensive suit. "Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. We contend that these recordings were taken out of context and that Detective Johnson has orchestrated this entire affair in retaliation for an internal affairs investigation into her own misconduct." Reed's lawyer took a different approach. "My client acknowledges his role in these events but was acting under the influence and direction of Lieutenant Wilson, who was his superior officer. Sergeant Reed is prepared to cooperate fully with the prosecution." Klein's lawyer, a distinguished woman with gray hair, stood last. "Your Honor, Judge Klein categorically denies all accusations. His association with the other defendants was purely professional and within the bounds of proper judicial conduct." Judge Patterson listened to each statement without comment. When the lawyers finished, he reviewed some notes before addressing the courtroom. "I've reviewed the evidence presented thus far, and I find there is sufficient cause to proceed to trial for all three defendants. Bail will continue as previously set." He shuffled some papers on his desk. "Now, before we adjourn," the courtroom doors suddenly opened, interrupting the judge. All heads turned as the mayor entered, followed by two men in suits who Amara recognized as FBI agents. The mayor was an imposing woman in her 60s, known for her no-nonsense approach to city governance. Judge Patterson looked surprised, but quickly regained his composure. "Madam Mayor, this is unexpected. May I ask the reason for this interruption?" The mayor approached the bench. "My apologies for the interruption, Your Honor, but I have information pertinent to these proceedings that cannot wait." Judge Patterson gestured for her to continue. The mayor turned to face the courtroom. "As of this morning, the FBI has expanded its investigation into judicial corruption in Riverdale. Based on evidence uncovered in the investigation of Judge Klein, federal agents are now investigating 3 additional judges in our district court system." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Klein's face had gone pale. "Furthermore," the mayor continued, "given the serious nature of these allegations and the evidence that has come to light, I am requesting that Judge Klein be removed from the bench immediately, pending the outcome of both the state and federal cases against him." Judge Patterson nodded gravely. "That would fall under the authority of the State Judicial Review Board, but I will ensure your request is expedited, Madam Mayor." The mayor wasn't finished. "There is one more matter, Your Honor. In light of recent events, I believe our police department is in need of new leadership. Leadership committed to integrity, transparency, and justice." She turned to look directly at Amara. "After careful consideration and a thorough review process, I am pleased to announce that Detective Amara Johnson has been selected as Riverdale's new chief of police. Effective immediately upon the conclusion of these proceedings." The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Amara sat frozen, unable to process what she just heard. Chen squeezed her arm in congratulation. Wilson and Reed stared at Amara, their expressions shifting from confusion to dawning horror as they realized what this meant. Their former target, the woman they had tried to destroy, would now be their boss, assuming they weren't in prison. Judge Patterson banged his gavel to restore order. "Congratulations, Detective, or should I say Chief Johnson. This court offers its best wishes for your new position." He turned his attention back to the defendants. "Given this new information, I'm ordering all 3 defendants to be held without bail until trial. There is significant risk that they may attempt to influence witnesses or tamper with additional evidence." He banged his gavel once more. "Court is adjourned until trial, which will be scheduled for next month." As the courtroom began to clear, Amara remained seated, still processing the sudden turn of events. The mayor approached her, extending a hand. "Chief Johnson, I look forward to working with you. We have much to discuss, but that can wait until tomorrow. Today belongs to justice." "Thank you, Madam Mayor," Amara managed, finding her voice. "I'm honored by your confidence in me." As the mayor turned to leave, Wilson and Reed were being led out in handcuffs. Wilson stopped, looking directly at Amara for the first time that day. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low but clear. Before Amara could respond, one of the court officers nudged Wilson forward. "Keep moving," the officer said firmly. Chen leaned close to Amara. "You did it," he said, pride evident in his voice. "You brought them down and came out on top." Amara shook her head slightly. "We did it," she corrected him. "I couldn't have done this alone." As they left the courtroom, reporters swarmed around them, shouting questions about the case and Amara's new appointment. Amara raised a hand for quiet. "I'll make a full statement tomorrow," she told them. "Today I'll just say this. Justice prevailed, but our work is far from over. Riverdale deserves a police department that serves all its citizens with integrity and fairness. As chief, that will be my highest priority." With Chen running interference, she made her way through the crowd and down the courthouse steps. The sun was shining, and for the first time in weeks, Amara felt like she could breathe freely again. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Earning the trust of the department and the community would take time. But today, at least, was a victory worth savoring. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the chief's office, her office now. Amara stood by the large oak desk, running her fingers along its polished surface. After 20 years of service, former Chief Daniels had left his mark on this room. Pictures of him with mayors and governors lined the walls. Plaques and awards filled the shelves. It felt strange to stand here knowing this space now belonged to her. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Officer Rivera poked her head in. "The staff is assembled in the conference room, Chief Johnson." "Whenever you're ready, Chief Johnson." The title still felt foreign on her ears. It had been 2 days since the courtroom revelation, and Amara had spent most of that time in meetings with the mayor, the city council, and various department heads. This morning would be her first official address to the officers under her command, many of whom had watched her being led away in disgrace just weeks ago. "Thank you, Rivera. I'll be right there." Alone again, Amara took a deep breath and straightened her uniform. The chief's uniform was different from the detective's attire she'd worn for years, more formal, with additional insignia denoting her rank. She had considered wearing a suit instead, but decided the uniform sent a stronger message. She was not just an administrator. She was one of them, a cop committed to the job and the oath they had all taken. The walk to the conference room felt longer than usual. Officers stood aside as she passed, some offering congratulations, others simply watching with uncertain expressions. Amara understood their hesitation. Her appointment had been sudden, and the department was still reeling from the scandal. Trust would take time to build. The conference room fell silent as she entered. Every seat was filled with additional officers standing along the walls. Amara recognized faces from every division: patrol, detectives, traffic, community outreach. Chen sat near the front, giving her an encouraging nod. Making her way to the podium, Amara surveyed the room. These were her officers now. Their futures, their careers, the safety of Riverdale, all of it rested partly on her shoulders. The responsibility was enormous, but she felt ready for it. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady. "I know my appointment as chief comes at a turbulent time for our department. The actions of Lieutenant Wilson, Sergeant Reed, and Judge Klein have cast a shadow over all of us. Many of you are wondering what happens next, and that's what I want to address today." She paused, making eye contact with various officers around the room. "First, let me be clear. The vast majority of the men and women in this department are dedicated, honest officers who serve this community with integrity every day. The corruption we uncovered was limited to a few individuals, not a reflection of this department as a whole." Some of the tension in the room seemed to ease slightly. "That said, we have work to do. Public trust has been damaged, and it's our job to rebuild it. Starting today, we're implementing new procedures for evidence handling, case review, and internal oversight." She outlined the changes: body cameras for all officers, regular audits of evidence logs, a new anonymous tip line for officers to report concerns, and community review boards for use of force incidents. These changes aren't punitive, she emphasized. They're protective, designed to protect both the public and you, the officers who serve them. Good cops have nothing to fear from transparency and accountability. A hand went up in the middle of the room. Officer Benson, a 20-year veteran known for his straightforward manner. "Yes, Officer Benson?" Amara acknowledged him. "With all due respect, Chief, these changes sound expensive. Is the city providing additional funding, or are we expected to do more with less again?" It was a fair question, and typical of Benson to ask what others were thinking. "The mayor has committed to a 10% increase in our operational budget," Amara replied. "Additionally, we've received a federal grant for the body camera program. I won't ask you to do more without providing the resources you need to succeed." More hands went up. Amara spent the next half hour answering questions, some supportive, others skeptical. She addressed each one directly, neither sugarcoating challenges nor dismissing concerns. As the meeting concluded, Amara made one final statement. "I know some of you may have doubts about my leadership. That's understandable. I don't expect blind loyalty. I expect professionalism. Judge me by my actions, not by rumors or preconceptions. My door is always open to any officer who wants to discuss department matters in good faith." She paused, looking around the room once more. "We have a chance to make this department better than it's ever been, more effective, more respected, more just. I'm asking each of you to be part of that transformation. Thank you for your time." Dismissed. As the officers filed out, some approached to offer personal congratulations or ask additional questions. Chen waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "Good speech," he said. "You hit the right notes." "You think so?" Amara asked. Benson wasn't the only skeptic in that room. "You can't win everyone over in one day," Chen reminded her. "But you made a strong start." They walked together toward her office. "The mayor wants daily updates on the Wilson Reed Klein case," Amara said. "Where do we stand?" Reed's deal is finalized, Chen replied. He's giving detailed testimony about the bribery scheme, the evidence tampering, everything. In exchange, he'll get 5 years instead of 20. And Wilson? Still fighting, but his lawyer's pushing him to deal. The recordings are damning, and with Reed testifying against him, his chances at trial are slim to none. What about Klein? Chen smiled slightly. That's the interesting part. The FBI investigation has uncovered offshore accounts linked to Klein with deposits totaling over $2 million. Way more than what Wilson and Reed were paying him. They think he was involved in something bigger. Amara stopped walking. Something bigger, like what? They're not sharing all the details yet, but the working theory is that Klein was helping launder money for one of the bigger drug operations moving product through Riverdale. The FBI has been watching them for months, so our case helped break open a federal investigation. Amara mused. No wonder the mayor was so eager to appoint me. She knew this was coming. Politics, Chen said with a shrug. But in this case, it worked in our favor. Back in her office, Amara found a stack of files waiting for review. Personnel decisions, budget allocations, ongoing investigations. The administrative work of running a police department was daunting, but she was determined to master it. A knock on her door frame made her look up. Captain Lewis from Internal Affairs stood there, his expression uncomfortable. Chief Johnson, he said formally. Do you have a moment? Come in, Captain, she replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Lewis sat stiffly. I owe you an apology. I believed the evidence against you because it came from officers I trusted. I should have looked deeper. Amara studied him for a moment. Lewis had been thorough in his investigation, but he had also been deceived by Wilson and Reed. Apology accepted, Captain, she said finally. We all learned a valuable lesson about trust and verification. Lewis nodded, looking relieved. Thank you, Chief. There's something else you should know. He placed a folder on her desk. This is a list of cases handled by Wilson and Reed over the past 5 years. We're reviewing each one for potential tampering or misconduct. Amara opened the folder. The list ran for several pages.
How many cases are we talking about?
Over 200, Lewis replied grimly. Some people may have been wrongfully convicted. Others who should have gone to prison might have walked free. This has to be our top priority, Amara said, already thinking of the resources they would need. I want a task force dedicated to reviewing these cases. Pull officers from other divisions if necessary. Yes, Chief, Lewis agreed. I've already started compiling a team. After Lewis left, Amara stood by the window looking out at the city she had sworn to protect. Riverdale was a mix of old and new. Historic buildings downtown, modern developments spreading outward. From her window, she could see kids playing in the park, people shopping, workers heading to lunch, ordinary lives unfolding, all trusting that the police would keep them safe. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts again. Sorry to bother you, Chief, said Officer Rivera. There's someone here to see you. Says it's important. Ray Washington, the courthouse janitor, stood in the doorway. He looked nervous but determined. Mr. Washington, Amara greeted him warmly. Please come in. I won't take much of your time, Chief Johnson, Ray said, fidgeting with his hat. I just wanted to say congratulations and to give you this. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. 20 years ago, my son was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. Despite all the evidence pointing to his innocence, he went to prison. Judge Klein was on that case. Maybe now, with honest people like you in charge, the truth can finally come out. His name is Anthony Washington. Case number 47382. Amara looked up at Ray, understanding dawning. Your son. Ray nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He's been in prison for 2 decades. I always knew something wasn't right about his case, but nobody would listen. I'll look into it personally, Amara promised. If there was misconduct, we'll find it. Ray smiled for the first time. That's all I'm asking for, Chief. A fair look by honest eyes. After Ray left, Amara added his son's case number to the top of the review list. This was why she had become a police officer in the first place, not for power or authority, but to help people who had nowhere else to turn. The sun was setting by the time Amara prepared to leave for the day. Her desk was still covered in files and her email inbox was overflowing. Being chief would mean longer hours and harder decisions. But as she looked at Ray's note again, she felt certain she was where she needed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chen. Courthouse steps, Channel 5 News. You need to see this. Amara turned on the small TV in her office, switching to Channel 5. Wilson was being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs, his lawyer beside him. The reporter was speaking excitedly. Breaking news as former Lieutenant James Wilson has withdrawn his not guilty plea. Sources say Wilson has agreed to a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and conspiracy in exchange for a reduced sentence. The camera zoomed in on Wilson's face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by defeat. He had finally realized he couldn't escape justice. Amara turned off the TV, feeling a sense of closure. Wilson, Reed, and Klein would face consequences for their actions. But the work of healing the department and the community was just beginning. As she gathered her things to leave, Amara noticed a framed photo on the wall. Chief Daniels on his first day, looking young and determined. She wondered if he had felt this same mix of determination and uncertainty when he first sat behind this desk. She took the photo down, placing it carefully in a box with Daniels' other personal items. Tomorrow she would bring in her own picture, not of herself alone, but of her academy graduation class. A reminder that no one does this job alone. Before leaving, Amara took one last look around the office, her office now. The challenges ahead were substantial, but for the first time in weeks she felt hopeful. Justice had prevailed. Not easily, not perfectly, but it had prevailed. And under her watch it would prevail again and again.